Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Or I say good afternoon, it is afternoon here in London. My name is Matthew Quish. I'm the Compliance and Sponsorship Manager here at Brunel University. And I hope a warm welcome to you all, wherever you're listening from and whatever the time may be, whether it's late in the evening or early in the morning. Over the course of the next hour, I'm going to run through a presentation regarding student visas and outline some of the key requirements in order to apply for a student visa. As you can see on the webinar platform, there is a chat function. If I could please ask you to put any questions in there, and when I finish the presentation, I will happily take those questions at the end until the end of the session in an hour's time. If I could please ask you, as my colleague has mentioned in the chat already, if you could please focus on visa-related questions, as that is the main topic of today's presentation. If you have any admissions or accommodation-related questions, please do feel free to contact those departments, and we are also running some other webinars on those subjects later in the year. So just very briefly, I'm not sure if anyone on the webinar today is a national of the EU, the EA, or Switzerland, but just in case, it's really important just to note that there has, of course, been some very significant changes to the UK immigration system that has been brought about by what you've probably heard of called Brexit, which is the informal name given to the UK's departure from the European Union. EU, EEA and Swiss nationals resident in the UK can apply to settle here under the EU settlement scheme, and note that the deadline for this is the 30th of June, and the link is there on the slides. However, please note that freedom of movement for EU, EEA and Swiss nationals did come to an end on the 31st of December, which will mean that if you're not currently resident in the UK and you're intending to come to Brunel and to the UK to study in September, for example, you may well require a student visa if you don't qualify to apply under the EU settlement scheme. So this presentation may still apply for you if you are an EU, EEA or Swiss national, which it wouldn't have done before the end of last year. But now to focus on the student visa. If you need to apply for a visa to study in the UK on a full-time basis, the type of visa that you will need is now called a student visa. Now then, many of you on the webinar today, I'm sure you probably heard of the term Tier 4 or Tier 4 General. This was the old name for the visa up until last October of 2020, but the visa route has changed its name quite simply to the student route, and you would apply for a student visa. Although generally speaking, most of the rules and regulations remain the same. There might be some of you who are in the UK at the moment with a Tier 4 visa, studying at another institution. You may be coming to Brunel in September or in the future. Again, the rules are quite similar when it comes to the student visa route. So this presentation will apply to that. And as I've said, my presentation is going to be around 20 minutes long, and at the end, I'll happily take any questions. So first and foremost, this is really important. Before you can apply for your visa, Brunel University must give you a very important document I'm sure you're aware of called a CAS, a Confirmation of Acceptance for Studies. The CAS is an electronic document, and it has a unique reference number that allows you to apply for the student visa. You cannot apply for your visa unless you have a CAS, because you have to input it onto the online application form. Please note that your offer to study at Brunel University must be unconditional before we can send you a CAS. We are not able to send you a CAS if your offer is still conditional. So if you still have conditions of your offer to meet, whether it be with your qualifications, or if there are any documents you need to send in, or if you need to pay your deposit, for example, you must have met all of your conditions of your offer first. And we will then email your CAS details to you when we issue that. The CAS is an electronic document. We also send a copy of it to the UK Home Office or UK Visas and Immigration. So that means that you don't need to have a hard copy of the CAS. So you're not going to get your CAS in the form of a letter. We're not going to post it to you. It will be an electronic document that is sent to you by email, but that's absolutely fine. The CAS details will have everything that you need in order to apply for your visa. We get asked quite a lot to supply sort of hard copies of CASs, but they are not required. They are electronic documents. And the CAS will confirm that we wish to accept you as a student to Brunel University. and it will provide all of the information that you need for your visa application. So the course details, the course dates, it will have information about the tuition fees and how much money is left to pay on that, which I'm going to speak about in a minute. And it will have all the pieces of information that need to be inputted into your visa application. So how do you apply for your visa? The best place to go is the UKVI website, which gives details on what you need to do in order to apply for your visa, and the link is on the slide there. And the application form is now fully online. Note that you can only apply for your visa 6 months before your course starts, or if you are resident in the UK, up to 3 months before the course starts, if you're extending your visa inside the UK. And we always recommend that you apply for your visa as soon as you possibly can once you have the CAS. So you can take your time with the visa application and you have your visa in good time before the start of the course. How long it may take to receive your visa depends on what country you're applying in, and that information is available on the Home Office website. As a general rule, you should expect a standard visa application to take somewhere between 2 and 3 weeks. Sometimes there can be delays in peak periods, particularly in the summer months, August and September, as we lead up to the big university intakes that we all have. Also, note that sometimes you can pay for a priority service and get your visa application processed even quicker if you're willing to pay that additional fee, although that is a matter of personal choice. We don't tell you whether or not you have to do that, but you may choose to do so. But either way, again, we always recommend please do apply for your visa as soon as you possibly can, and therefore please make sure that you meet the conditions of your offer as soon as you can, so we can issue your CAS to you. I'm going to speak now about the documents that you need to supply in the visa application. Now, please note that this may vary greatly depending on various factors, such as the country you're applying in, the course you're studying. So I'm not going to necessarily go into very much detail about the documents that you need to supply. It will be made clear when we issue with your CAS. We will give you more guidance on what documents you need. And also when you fill in the visa application form, it will tell you what documents you need to supply. But this is just a general overview of what you will need to do for your visa application. You will definitely need a current passport or another valid travel document. You will all definitely need that. All of you will need to pay an immigration health surcharge. Please visit the Home Office website for details of that. This is a fee that you have to pay linked to your visa application, and this enables you to access medical care when you're in the UK through our National Health Service. So the cost of that is £470 per year of the visa. So obviously the longer your course, the more it will cost. But again, rest assured, it does allow you to access medical treatment in the UK if you so need it. And the payment for that is built into the visa application process. Depending on the country you're from, you may need to take a tuberculosis test, and you'll need to get a certificate to confirm that you are free of it. That has to be supplied in your visa application. Again, please visit the Home Office website there. Again, it will be made clearer when you go to apply for your visa as well. It is likely, although this does depend on your nationality, it is likely, particularly if you are from a country such as India, that you're going to have to evidence that you can pay your tuition fees and your living costs, and you're going to need to supply that evidence in your visa application. I'm going to talk about this in a lot more detail in the next slides, because this is one of the key areas of the student visa application, where the most common area of mistakes and reasons for visa refusals as well. And again, depending on your course, if you're coming to do a postgraduate course, particularly in a field of engineering, you might need an Academic Technology Approval Scheme certificate or an ATAS certificate. If you need one of these, our admissions team would have told you in your offer letter. Please do apply for that certificate as quickly as possible. Again, a bit like with visas, the application process can be delayed in the peak periods of the summer months. So it's always best to apply as early as possible, because they take generally around a month to be issued. So to speak in a bit more detail now about the finance requirements, you may need to prove that you have enough money to pay your remaining tuition fees and your living costs in the UK, and this is known as finance. Note that some nationals, including those from the EU, and some other countries such as the USA and Australia, for example, do not need to evidence this in the application, but you are still required under the student visa rules to hold the money. The UK Home Office do reserve the right to request these documents from students as part of their visa application. So please do visit that link on the Home Office website for further guidance on that if you are deemed to be what's called a low risk national. But if you are not exempt, and this will apply to most countries, including, as I mentioned, India, which is obviously a key student market. I know many of you on the webinar today are from India. You will need to show that you can pay your remaining tuition fees for the first academic year of your course. But note that any money that you've already paid, such as the course deposit, will be listed on your CAS, and that can be deducted from the amount of money that you need to show. For your living costs, you need to show that you have available funds of £1,334 for each month of your course, and that's up to a maximum of 9 months if your course is 9 months or longer, which obviously most of our degree courses are going to be. This equals a fixed figure of £12,006. Now, all of the specific details about the finance requirements can be found, most importantly, in the student visa policy guidance. The link is there on the slide. Always recommend that you read the policy guidance before you apply for your visa application. Likewise, a really good piece of source of information and advice is the UK Council for International Student Affairs, or UKISA. They have a really useful website that explains what financial requirements you will need to meet and how you can evidence that in your student visa application. Likewise, when we issue your CAS, we'll give you a lot more guidance on this as well. Another area of visa applications that does cause quite a lot of concern amongst our students and is sometimes a reason for a refusal is what we call credibility, or where the UKVI will interview students as part of their visa application. The first thing I would like to stress is that if you are selected for an interview, it may be whether you're inside or outside of the UK, please do not be alarmed. It is part of the normal visa process. You're not invited for interview because the UKVI have any specific suspicions about you, but it is part of the normal process, and it is designed to ensure that you have a genuine intention to study in the UK, and in our case, at Brunel University or whatever university you're applying for the visa for. In the interview, which will be done typically via a video link, a Skype-like system with an immigration or a member of staff from the Home Office based in the UK, you will be asked a number of questions about your intentions to study at Brunel and in the UK, your chosen course, your career plans, and your financial circumstances. And the best piece of advice I can give you is just please be prepared to answer the questions as clearly and honestly as you possibly can about why you chose to study at Brunel and in the UK. So to expand upon that, before you have the interview, really do think about, why did you choose Brunel? What was it about Brunel and the course that you've chosen to study that made you want to come and join us, as opposed to other UK universities? So you're probably going to be asked why you chose Brunel above other UK universities. You're probably going to be asked why you chose Brunel as opposed to studying in your home country or another country. You're likely to be asked about your finances. So even though there are specific financial requirements in the documentation, you should still be prepared to answer questions about where is your money coming from? Is it coming from a parent? Is it coming from your family? Have you saved the money for your work? It doesn't necessarily matter where, but you need to be prepared to answer those questions honestly and clearly. And likewise, finally, think very carefully about, how does Brunel's course and studying in the UK support your career plans? What do you want to do when you finish your degree? And how is studying in the UK at Brunel going to help you with that? As long as you just take some time to think about that before you undertake the visa interview, generally speaking, there shouldn't be an issue. So what happens after you get your visa and after your visa application? If you're coming to the UK for more than 6 months, you will need to collect a document called a biometric residence permit, a BRP, after you have arrived here in the UK. You will initially be granted a 90-day entry visa, which is a vignette placed on your passport that allows you to enter in the UK. Please note that if you are an EU, EA or Swiss national, you will receive a digital visa rather than a BRP, which can be confirmed on the Home Office website, a little bit like the EU settled status. And if that applies to you when you come to register with us in September or beyond, we will ask you to confirm that to us as part of the enrolment registration process. If you do need a BRP, it's a plastic card that acts as the full visa to cover your course, and you must collect the BRP within 10 days of entering the UK. The exception to this, unfortunately, as I'm sure you're all aware, as we live throughout this pandemic worldwide, is that when you come to the UK, you may be required to self-isolate or quarantine for a certain period of time, usually 10 days. And if you need to do that, you are allowed to do that before going to collect your BRP. Please don't collect your BRP if you need to self-isolate first. You are allowed to undertake that quarantine period beforehand. The UKVI will inform you of where to collect your BRP, but this can be either from a UK post office that will be near to where you'll be living. It's based on the address you supply in the visa application, or the best place we'd recommend that you collect your BRP is actually right here at Brunel University. And details of how to do this will be included in your CAS. In your CAS, we're going to give you a unique code that you can input into your visa application, and that will mean that your BRP is sent to Brunel University. We do strongly recommend that you do this, particularly if you're living on campus or you're going to be living close to the university, as it makes it very convenient for you to collect your BRP here at Brunel University. There might be some of you on the webinar today who already have a UK visa. If you do so, you may be allowed to enroll at Brunel University using this, but we do strongly recommend that you check with us before arriving for registration beforehand, just to make sure that the visa that you have allows study in the UK. Generally speaking, most visas do. So if you have a dependent visa, an employment visa, an ancestry visa, for example, a youth mobility scheme visa, most of those do allow study. Please note that if you have a tier 4 or a student visa, we can only register you if you for the course that visa was issued for, i.e. based on the CAS. So you won't be allowed to enroll on your previous tier 4 or student visa, particularly if it was for another institution. You can't enroll with visitor visas on degree courses or on startup visas or under the new graduate visa route. So please do check if you're intending to try and register at Brunel with a non-student visa. Please do check with us if you're not sure. And you can contact us by email, which is on the slide there, admissions.immigration@brunel.ac.uk if you need that information. Just a reminder, this is really important, just to make a note of this very early on before you start your journey with a student visa, is that please remember that once you've entered the UK and registered at Brunel University London, you will have certain responsibilities if you have a student visa. You should be allowed to work in the UK, which will be indicated on your visa, but please must ensure that you do not exceed the number of hours that you will be allowed to work each week during term time, which will typically be 20 hours a week if you are on a degree level course. You must also take care not to undertake any form of prohibited, i.e. illegal employment, and that would include self-employment, professional sport or coaching, or entertainment. We will give you a lot more information about this when you register through our registration process, but just to make sure you're aware of this at an early stage, I'll put it in the presentation today. Please also note that you are expected to attend all scheduled academic events on your chosen course, unless you have good reason why this is not possible. Brunel University, we are going to have to monitor your attendance or your engagement on your course when you hold a student visa. So please don't be alarmed by that. We will have to check up on your engagement. So please ensure that you do attend all of your scheduled events if you can, and if you can't, as you'll be informed at the time, you can contact your academic department to report any absences. If you do need any further information or advice following this presentation, there are multiple sources of information. Please do visit our Brunel website on visas immigration. The link is there on the first bullet point. As I mentioned earlier, a really good source of information is the UKISA website, which the link is there. They provide a very student-friendly facing guidance on how to make a visa application, so that's well worth a look. But most importantly, that third bullet point, I always have to stress this. When you make a visa application, it's really important to read the specific rules that are in place, and that is based in the government guidance, the UK government guidance, which is the student visa policy guidance that is available. It's a very long document, and I'm very much aware that some of it can seem quite complicated, which is why our website and the UKISA website will supplement some of that information for you and break it down into a more understandable format. But fundamentally, the rules about making your visa application are in that student visa policy guidance, and it's really important to make sure that you meet those. And likewise, if you have any further questions, we are available by email. We do very much prefer to give immigration advice in writing. Therefore, we do prefer, if you can, send it to us by email, just so we can send you appropriate information for you to read at a later stage. It can be quite difficult to explain over the phone quite complicated pieces of immigration information. So again, that's admissions.immigration@brunel.ac.uk. So thank you very much for your time. I hope that presentation was useful. But now for the next 25 minutes or so, 35 minutes or so, I will happily take any questions. You please need to put them in the chat, and my colleague Lisa is going to read them out as we go along. Thank you.
Hi, Matt. Thanks for the presentation. I've got a few questions that have come in. The first one is from Surcharge, who is due to start his MSc in September. And he's just asked, can I move from the visa I would have for the MSc directly into a PhD, or do I need to get another visa to continue my studies?
Yep, thank you. That's a great question. Yes, you can. So if you're currently in the UK and you're coming to Brunel to join a new course after the completion of your previous course, so as you mentioned, if you're moving from a master's degree to a PhD, or if you're doing that in the future, yes, you can generally extend your student visa inside the UK. You do need to make the new visa application before you can register at Brunel. And in order to apply inside the UK, you must have successfully completed the course. So you must have been awarded your previous qualification. You must have successfully finished it in order to be allowed to do that. Otherwise, you may have to apply from your home country overseas. The other rule, it comes when you're moving from one visa to another, in terms of the student visa, or from a tier 4 to a student visa, is that the new course must start within 28 days of your previous or your current visa expiring. So if there is a gap of more than 28 days between the expiry date of your current visa and the start date of your new course, unfortunately, that would mean you have to apply from overseas if you're not already there.
Great. I've got another question. They're all coming in, so they're bounding around a bit.
No problem.
I've got one from Alipa, I think. Hi, Matthew. My course started in January and is 15 months long. I did my first term online overseas and will only apply for the visa for the remaining 8 to 9 months. And then the question is, how much IHS fees should I pay in this case? £470 for 1 year as I'll be in the UK for under a year, or 700 plus as the course is 15 months in total?
To my knowledge, when you make the visa application, it should only calculate the length. It will calculate the length of leave that you'll be granted. So because you've been studying online for a few months, and if you're coming in later, you should only have to pay the immigration health surcharge for the period that your visa is granted. So if it's a year, or if the period you're going to spend in the UK is a year or more, you'll have to pay £470 for the full year. Note that any period beyond a year on your visa is then you have to pay half of that fee, so that's £235. So you might need to add that up. But what I can assure you is when you make your visa application, there'll be an online tool that it will link to when you're completing the form, and it will tell you, calculate how much you need to pay. So the application process will tell you how much you need to pay. But based on that, you shouldn't have to pay the immigration health surcharge for any time that you've spent overseas without a student visa. It will only apply to what your visa will be when it is issued.
I've got another one from Anubhav. Does freelance work as content writing or graphic designing count as self-employment?
Yes. Yeah, that's a really good question and really important point. We always have to advise our international students whose visas we're going to sponsor. You've got to be really careful when you come to the UK, and bear in mind that the purpose of a student visa is to study. Any form of freelancing, self-contracted work, business activity, self-employment is prohibited. So I generally have to advise, unfortunately, that if you are doing that at the moment and you want to come and study in the UK on a full-time basis, you might have to cease that activity while you are here, at least in terms of getting paid for it. I mean, there's nothing stopping somebody doing, some writing for their own leisure, for example, and then maybe expanding upon that at the end of the course. Of course, we are going to have the new graduate post-study work visa coming that would allow that. But while you are in the UK on a student visa, you should refrain from any type of self-employment, and that would include freelancing.
Right, thanks for that. I've got quite a few questions talking about evidence of finances. So you mentioned the US. So you mentioned the US as a country that may not need to show evidence for finances. I was curious if the same applies to Canada.
Yes, Canada is on the same list. On the link that's on the slides, and also when you look at the guidance, there will be a link to what the UK government classes differentiated countries. So there'll be a list of of countries where it is not mandatory to provide financial documents in a visa application. Yes, Canada is included in that. There's many others, so I apologize I didn't go through them all one by one. Just be careful to check that when you make your visa application. And again, the thing I'd always stress, this is something that we sometimes see students get mixed up with. Even though you don't have to evidence it, in this case, if you are one of those nationals, you are still expected to have the money available. And the UKVI, although it's quite unusual, they reserve the right to request them. And sometimes they will do spot checks. Sometimes if they're looking at an application, they might, for some reason, something will pop up that means they want to check it. So even though you don't have to necessarily evidence it on a mandatory basis, still hold the money as if you did have to provide it, please, just to avoid any potential problems with your visa application.
Okay, great. Another one based on finances. So I've got another question based around a scholarship. So they've received a scholarship, which also includes a stipend as well. What would they just need to have the letter showing that they've received the scholarship for proof of finances?
Yes, again, a really good question, because that does apply to a lot of our international students. You can use evidence of financial sponsorship to meet the finance requirements in a visa application. The sponsor has to be a government or a university or an international company. A letter has to meet the format of the letter has to meet certain requirements. It must be dated no more than 31 days before the visa application, and it must confirm exactly the amount of money that is being given towards tuition fees and living costs. And if where necessary, it must of course confirm that the required tuition fees and living costs are being covered by the sponsorship. So the first year tuition fees must be covered, and the living costs of £12,006 must be covered. Again, as always, the student visa guidance and all of the information that we'll send you when we issue your CAS, when applicable, will provide a lot more detail about what format these letters need to have. But the short answer is yes, you can use sponsor letters in a visa application.
Okay. There's another couple of questions about showing finances. So the first one from Sohail is, what should be the validity of the issued bank statement which is required for student visa application?
Yeah, that's really important to note. So if you're using bank statements to evidence your funds for a visa application, as I mentioned with the letters, the bank statement must be printed no more than 31 days, 1 month before the visa application is made. And it's also important to note that the closing balance of the account must also be no more than 31 days before the visa application, because the important point to note, really, really important, you must hold the money in the bank account for 28 consecutive days. And so only at the end of that period, that needs to be indicated in the closing balance of the account. Really important. I'm gonna say it now because I'm sure I'll probably get another question. This is a really common area of confusion amongst students, and a mistake I often seem to make that I often see made by students innocently. Please remember, your bank statements can only be in your name, your parents' name, or a legal guardian's name. You cannot use the bank statements of other family members, friends, aunties, uncles, cousins, brothers, sisters, for example. You cannot use those bank statements. They have to be in your name, your parents' name, and if you use a parent's or legal guardian's bank statement, you must also supply evidence of your relationship, like a birth certificate and a letter of consent, allowing you to use those funds. So that's a really good question, a really good point. If you're planning on, making your visa application in the summer, I'd suggest that you start thinking about your finances even now. Put the money in the bank now, hold it. It's got to be there for 28 days before your visa application.
Hopefully that has answered a few questions that have come on the chat. I've got another one about an unconditional sanction letter from the bank. Is that a sufficient form of financial evidence for the visa?
It would depend on the format. You can use bank letters as opposed to bank statements, but the same rules generally apply. The letter must confirm that you have access to the funds available. It must confirm how much the funds are. It must confirm that they've been held for 28 days, and the closing balance and the document must be printed within 1 month of the visa application. Again, a common pitfall, an area of a mistake that sometimes students make, is where they use financial evidence of funds that are not available immediately. So you can't use shares or bonds. You have to be very careful with anything that's like fixed deposits. The money has to be accessible, so they have to be like current savings accounts to be used. So again, if you don't have that at the moment, it's well worth thinking about preparing that before you make the visa application in the summer.
I've got another question. My course is over 2 years, the second year being a placement year. So do I have to show the tuition fee for 2 years or 1 year?
No, it's just one. The visa rules only state that you have to show your visa financial evidence to cover the first academic year of the course. But just to expand upon that slightly, remember when I spoke about credibility interviews, you may still be asked in the interview how you intend to fund your studies for the duration of the course. So have a think about, you should be planning obviously to finance your course for however long it is in the UK, but in terms of the actual evidence, no, it only needs to be for the first year of the course.
Okay, I've got another one. If a dependent is travelling, would it be the same living cost and health surcharge that would apply? If that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. The health surcharge is the same in terms of it's based on the length of the visa. The living costs differ slightly. There is some guidance that we have on our website, so off the top of my head, I need to look into that for you. Please do contact us, and we can look into it for you if it's not clear. But again, it's on our website, it's on the UKISA website, and it's in the UKVI guidance. But there are slightly different rules around the funding, the finance requirements for a dependent.
I've got another question. After getting my visa, when can I enter the UK? And where do we have to give our UK address so that we can collect the BRP?
Okay, when you apply for your visa and your visa is granted, if you're overseas, you'll get what's called an entry clearance visa. Now, if you apply for your visa in good time, this should be valid from 1 month before your course start date, but it will be based on the information that you put in your visa application, because you'll be asked to input your intended date of travel and obviously the course start date. So if you are applying for your visa in good time in the summer, you can expect it to be issued 1 month before the course starts for you to enter the UK. You'll have to input your UK address as part of the visa application form. It doesn't matter too much if you don't know it at the point of visa application. You can just put Brunel University's general address. But you will be required to keep the UKVI up to date of your current address as well as the university. So there's an online form that international students can complete when you finalize and change your UK address. And also you need to keep Brunel University updated. So again, we have a process that will let you know when you register, and you can amend your contact details on our student record system for that.
I've got another question from Nicole. How long after you meet the conditions of your offer does it take for Brunel to issue your CAS?
In terms of an administrative process, issuing CAS is built into our unconditional offer processing. So generally speaking, we don't issue an unconditional offer and then issue a CAS later. The CAS is issued alongside the unconditional offer processing. So our general service standard is that you should receive your CAS within 2 working days of the unconditional offer being processed.
I've got a question about the PSW visa. Any valuable information about this? Even though we take a 2-year program, do I still receive a 2-year PSW?
Yeah, so for those of you, I'm sure there's not many of you, but I'm sure you, for those of you who don't, one of the hot topics here in the UK when it comes to visas is it's called the graduate immigration route, but you've probably heard of it referred to as a post-study work visa. Students, so when you come to the UK, you study in the UK with a student visa, you will, depending on certain circumstances, you may well be eligible for this. You're going to be eligible as long as you study any degree course. You must complete the course for which your visa was issued, so you have to successfully complete your degree. The visa is going to be 2 years long if you do an undergraduate or a postgraduate taught degree, although it will be 3 years long if you complete a PhD, a research degree. The visa is separate, so it's not built into your student visa. It's a separate visa that you have to apply for after you finish your course. You have to be in the UK to apply while your student visa remains valid at the end of your course. There's a lot more information about the post-study work visa, both on the Brunel website and the visas and immigration page that I mentioned, and on the Home Office website and on the UKISA website as well.
I've got a question on the back of you talking about the CAS being offered alongside the unconditional offer. Andrea got an unconditional offer 6 weeks ago but didn't get a CAS. I'm guessing that's because they weren't issued at that point. I don't know if you can clarify.
Yeah, apologies. What we've done, I mean, like throughout the summer months, and we are now in this stage of our admissions process. When we process an unconditional offer, we'll issue a CAS. But if you had an unconditional offer quite a long time ago, We weren't ready to issue CASs until actually just this week, for various reasons. Obviously, we've been looking at the UKVI guidance around studying in the UK in light of the pandemic. And also, we won't issue CASs any more than 6 months before the course start date, because that's the period you can apply for a visa. So if you have an unconditional offer longer than 6 months before the course start date, we won't issue a CAS until then. If you've been holding an unconditional offer, what we're doing at the moment, we're working through all of those and issuing CASs this week and next week. So what I would please advise, if you haven't got your CAS by the end of next week, please do contact our admissions team, and they'll look into it for you. But I would probably expect you to have it by then, with an unconditional offer.
I'm not sure if you'd be able to answer this, but Preeti from India, I'd like to ask about the vaccination requirements. Do you know anything about the vaccination requirements, or where students can find that information from?
Yeah, I'm afraid I don't know it specifically, because at the moment there is no UK government requirement to be vaccinated to enter the UK. Now, in the future, that might happen, and what the world looks like in September, I don't know. And if that does happen, of course, we will communicate that to all of our international students and offer holders. But at the moment, it's not a requirement. You don't have to be vaccinated to travel to the UK. Now, unfortunately, at the moment, as many of you will know, particularly those based in India, what the UK does have is restrictions on travel and the quarantine process. So at the moment, India is on what we call a red list, where if you want to travel to the UK, you have to undergo a 10-day quarantine period in a government-approved hotel. Now, all of that information is on the Home Office website. You'll be given more information again when you have a CAS and when you go through the visa application process. We are, of course, very, very much hoping here in the UK that is not in place come September, and particularly the end of September or early October, when our academic year starts. It can't be guaranteed, unfortunately, but we have to hope that may well be the case. But we will see what the situation is nearer at the time. But like I said, to my knowledge, there's no specific requirement at the moment to be vaccinated in order to travel.
Okay, I've got a couple of people have asked about how many hours you can work on the student visa. I believe it's 20, but I don't know if you can confirm that.
Yeah, I can. So if you're coming to study a degree course, so that's undergraduate, postgraduate, or research, the UK immigration rules will allow you to work 20 hours a week during term time. If you're on an English language course, it would be less, it would be 10 hours a week. Now, it's important to note that there is a differentiation between being in term time and when you're not in term. So when you're in a vacation period, for example, if you're on an undergraduate or a postgraduate talk program, when it's the Christmas holidays or the Easter holidays, or if you're an undergraduate student in the summer holiday after the end of your exams, you can actually work full time in that period. When you come to Brunel, we have a specific policy. We have a term time policy that we make you aware of. And if you want to work full time, you will have to show that to your employer, and your employer will determine whether or not you can work full time. But yes, it is generally during term time, the restriction is 20 hours a week. Working is a great way to get good work experience, so when you finish your degree, and of course supplement your income. I'm very much aware how much it costs for your degree and how much it costs to live in the UK. But I must stress, please always remember, I make this point again, I've already said it a few times before, the purpose of a student visa is to study in the UK. Therefore, the primary purpose is to study, not to work. So please be very careful when you're here in the UK not to breach any of the working restrictions, because if you do so, it can put your visa status at risk. We may have to withdraw sponsorship of your visa if you're ever found to be working in excess of the hours that you're allowed, or in a profession that is not allowed. So please do bear that in mind. Prepare your finances accordingly. Please do work. I want to encourage you. Please do work in the UK if it helps you, but within the rules that are in place. And we will have guidance for you when you come to Brunel. We have an immigration team based in our student centre who can give you advice on all of this as well.
Great. I've got two questions that are kind of related to each other. So the first one was, um, would my wife be able to apply for a student visa if they're in this country at the time?
There's various rules. It depends. The answer can be yes, but there's various rules and regulations about it. Again, quite difficult to go into specifics. First and foremost, in order to in order to apply for a student visa in the UK, you must have a valid visa, whether it's another Tier 4 student visa or another type of visa. There are some visas that you cannot switch from. So if you're in the UK on a visitor visa, for example, a tourist visa, you cannot apply in the UK. If you're in the UK on a student visa and you want to extend your student visa, you must have successfully completed the course for which your current student visa was issued. And the gap between the new course starting and the expiry date of the current visa must be 28 days or less. So if those various regulations are met, then yes, it is generally possible to apply for a student visa inside the UK. But again, further guidance is provided when you come to make that visa application, as we've outlined today.
Just a question on the back of the part-time work. Does volunteering or paid lab work aside from course requirements count as part-time work? I'm guessing the paid lab work does.
Yeah, I mean, generally speaking, if you're being paid to undertake a task, it is regarded as employment. If you're employed at Brunel for this, we have a system. You'll have to go through our university student employment system, so your hours will be restricted in that format. Volunteering is something different. You do have to be careful. Volunteering, there is no restriction on, although we always recommend students devote appropriate time to their studies as opposed to non-curricular activity. Again, I keep banging on about it, sorry, but the purpose of your student visa is to study in the UK. But volunteering is where there is no formal, unpaid, an informal relationship with an organization where you're not contracted to do specific work with them, and you can do that without any restriction on an unpaid basis. But be very careful because it is potentially possible to do unpaid work, which is where there's like a contract, a formal obligation to undertake a task. Always worth checking with the organisation that's running it to make sure it is permitted, and of course check with Brunel. As I mentioned, we do have an immigration team on site here who can give you support with this guidance when you're here.
I've got a question about deferral of the course. Just hold on, because I've just I've got Rashida who has not been able to secure a scholarship but have a CAS and visa. What happens to my visa after I defer my course?
Okay, unfortunately, we can only sponsor a student visa for the period that somebody is studying with us. So if you defer your place, we will withdraw sponsorship and that visa will become invalid. Eventually, the UKVI will curtail it, which is called where they shorten the visa. So if you've got your visa and defer, unfortunately, it will mean that when you're ready to come back or ready to start your course again, with the deferred start date, you would have to be issued with a new CAS and you'll have to make a new visa application.
I've got a question about immigration health surcharge. Is there any extra amount to be paid other than £475? A few websites have mentioned that we need to pay an extra amount of £235. So how is this information true?
Yeah, the information is true, but you just need to bear in mind that the immigration health surcharge is based on the length of your visa and therefore the length of your course. And it's also based on how much of the visa covers part of a year. So let's pretend your visa is exactly 1 year long, you would have to pay £470 for 1 year of the visa. However, as will happen with a lot of you, particularly on postgraduate courses, your visa might be 1 year and a few months long. It might be 1 year and 4 months or 1 year and 5 months long. In that case, you do have to pay the additional £235 to cover that additional few months of the visa because it's part of a year. And then you just have to really work it out from there how much you have to pay. If your visa was 2 years long, you'd have to pay 2 lots of 470. Maths was never my favourite subject, I'm afraid, but I'm sure you can work that out. And again, as I mentioned, when you apply for your visa, there'll be an online tool that will calculate how much you need to pay. So that reference to £235, it's where your visa covers part of a year but less than 6 months. Although please note that if it's more than 6 months, you will have to pay the full year fee. So let's say your visa was 1 year and 8 months long, it would be £470 times 2.
Yeah, I've got another question about part-time work. Can I do forex trading in the UK as my main source of income, or is that counted as self-employment?
That unfortunately sounds very close to self-employment. Anything where you're working for yourself or engaging in business activity, so sort of trading in stocks and shares, I would be very, very cautious, and I think the advice would be to refrain from that when you're here on a student visa, because that does seem to be business activity and self-employment.
I think you mentioned this earlier, but is it necessary to find accommodation before making the student visa application?
It's not mandatory, no. Well, of course, we do recommend it. It's probably good practice to do so. It can be quite difficult if you've entered the UK and you don't have somewhere lined up. Sometimes some of our students have to stay in hotels for the first few days or weeks of their course, and obviously that's often a lot more expensive than finding rented accommodation. But it's not a mandatory requirement, no. What in your visa application you'll be asked the question if you have confirmed your accommodation. If you haven't, you can just put where you expect to be staying. So you can put Brunel University's general address. But no, it's not a mandatory requirement. But it's good practice.
A couple of questions around if there is a salary cap for PSW visa.
No, there isn't. There's no salary or profession requirement for the post-study work visa. It's very flexible. It allows any level of work at any salary in the UK, and that does include actually self-employment. So once you finish your course, and if you get the post-study work visa, for those of you who have the skills, which I know some of you have because you mentioned it, to be self-employed, you can then do that.
Another for the PSW visa as well, is there any provision for extending the visa from 2 to 3 years for postgraduate students?
No, it will be a single fixed 2-year visa. That's not to say you can't then switch into another employment-based immigration category. So if during that 2-year period you get a job with a company that can sponsor a skilled work visa, or an entrepreneur visa, or some other form of employment visa, you can potentially switch into those. But no, you cannot extend the post-study work visa at all, and you can only have it once. Bear that in mind as well. So if you got the post-study work visa and then did another course and got a student visa for that, you can't apply for it again. You can only have it once.
I think we've answered most questions now. I've got a couple more. So I've got a question regarding the visa. I'd already applied for January intake, and I got my visa and paid an IHS of £960 for 2 years. Now I've deferred my course to September. Will I get a refund of the immigration health surcharge?
Unfortunately, probably not. It depends when your visa is curtailed. You're going to have to pay the charge again when you make your new visa application. and any period of the visa that is then curtailed for your current visa, you may be eligible for a refund. There is a refund process as a form you have to fill in with the UKVI, and they will tell you whether or not you're eligible for it. And again, we can support you if you contact our immigration team, which is immigration@brunel.ac.uk. Once you're enrolled, if you enroll with us, we can look into that for you. But unfortunately, it's likely you may need to pay again.
I've got a couple of questions around sort of the exams being delayed and how students can get their CAS after paying the deposit but not having their exam results. Is there anything you can advise on, or should they contact admissions?
It's probably more of an admissions question. I mean, we can only issue a CAS when you have an unconditional offer, which means you need to meet the requirements of the course. I believe our admissions team and the university is applying some flexible approaches to like registration. There'll be a prolonged registration period. Bear in mind our academic year for September 2021 has actually been delayed. It's been pushed back by a couple of weeks to what it normally would be. So potentially, if you can get your results into sort of mid-September, end of September, there should still be time for you to get your visa and register. But yeah, that is more of a question for admissions because it's equally around meeting the conditions of the offer. Unfortunately, worst case scenario, it may be a case of having to defer if you can't make a particular intake, but and we can cross that bridge if we come to it.
Okay, this will probably need to be the last question now, and I just want to apologise if there's any that haven't been answered. I've done my best to answer anything that isn't related specifically to the visas, but please either email admissions@brunel.ac.uk if it's about your application or any queries about your exam results, and then the email address that's on the screen if there's any visa related questions. So the last question from Sohail, can I make a student visa application from a country other than my home country where at present I have a valid visit visa?
No. What I mean by that is with a visit visa, no. You can only apply for your student visa generally in a country where you're either you're a national of that country, or where you have what's called ordinary residence, i.e. if you've got a long-term residency in that country to work or settle. If you're sort of just visiting a country for tourism, generally speaking, the answer is no. What I would say is that the UKVI will sometimes apply a flexible approach if you can demonstrate that you cannot apply in your home country because of COVID. So if you've been sort of stuck in another country, unable to travel because of like border closures or lack of flights or anything that's preventing you going to your home country, you're going to have to explain it in your visa application. It is a risk that the UKVI officer would have to sort of look at that and make a decision as to whether or not that is genuine. I would generally advise, if you want to visit visa in a particular country, to try and really do make plans to go back to your home country to apply, to reduce any risk of any problems.